The low thrum of the Kylar observation vessel, the asterisk scholar's gaze asterisk, was a familiar lullaby to Xylos. His multi-jointed ocular stalks, usually retracted for focus, extended slightly as he zoomed in on the data feed from a distant human colony. Humans, such an illogical species. His primary lens settled on a grainy image. Two humans. One, a younger female, seemed distressed. Her shoulders were hunched, her head bowed. The older male, slightly taller, approached her. He placed a complex set of appendages, their arms around her upper torso, drawing her close. This was comforting touch. Xylos's analytical matrix processed the data. Increased heart rate in both subjects, slight neural activity fluctuations, a temporary suppression of cortisol in the distressed subject. Inefficient. Illogical, a waste of energy. Yet human psychological resilience indices consistently ranked higher than most species. He noted the anomaly for further study. Unexplained biosocial anomaly 87-delta, he dictated to his ship's log. His processors were already moving on to analyzing the atmospheric composition of a newly discovered gas giant. A sudden, jarring klaxon blared through the asterisk scholar's gaze asterisk. Not an internal alert. A galactic-wide distress signal, fragmented, distorted, but urgent. Xylos felt a tremor deep in his neural net, an uncomfortable reverberation he couldn't immediately identify. His internal sensor for ambient psychic signatures spiked. Something was wrong. Dr. Eris Thorne, her fingers sticky with nutrient paste, traced a holographic map of the galactic arm on the small screen of her personal datapad. The tiny human research outpost, designated Outpost Echo 3, felt vast and empty tonight. Her only company, aside from the distant whirring of life support, was Captain Eva Rostova, busy with supply manifests in the cramped operations center. Eris was a xenopsychologist, a human specialist in alien culture and empathy, a field most galactic species considered quaint or entirely irrelevant. The Kylar, for instance, held logic as their highest virtue, dismissing emotional responses as base inefficiencies. The irony was not lost on Eris. She swallowed a mouthful of the bland paste. "Eva, are you picking up anything unusual from the Kylar sector?" she called out, her voice echoing slightly in the quiet space. Captain Rostova grunted in response, her fingers flying across her own console. "Just static, Eris, more than usual, and a lot of low-grade energy signatures, looks like. Distress signals, maybe. But they're not fully coherent," Eris frowned. "Kylar don't do distress signals unless it's a structural integrity failure or a tactical retreat. This feels different." A metallic tang suddenly filled the air, acrid and sharp, like ozone after a lightning strike, but without the accompanying bright flash. The lights in the outpost flickered, dimming to a sickly orange, then stabilizing. A low, persistent hum, like a grinding stone, vibrated through the deck plates. The station's central diagnostic system chirped, displaying a generic environmental anomaly alert. On the Kylar homeworld, Xylos felt the tremor intensify. It was no longer a distant resonance. It was a pressure inside his own mind, a million discordant thoughts clashing, twisting, forming a thick mental mire. Kylar around him, normally composed, were twitching, their ocular stalks retracting in distress. Commander Kale, a revered Kylar military strategist, stood rigid, his usually precise movements replaced by a subtle, continuous tremor. His multifaceted eyes, normally sharp and focused, darted around the room, unfocused, overwhelmed. A low, guttural sound, alien to Kylar vocalizations, escaped Kale's throat. Xylos knew this sound. It was the precursor to a complete neural shutdown, a state where the Kylar mind, overloaded, simply ceased to process. He had never seen it in a living Kylar before. Medical drones zipped through the halls, injecting calming agents, but the mental mire only deepened. Their advanced neural inhibitors, designed to filter out excessive sensory input, were failing. The problem was not external. It was internal. The signals were coming from within their own minds, amplified, distorted. Xylos, despite his own rising internal static, focused his analytical abilities. He replayed the data on human comforting touch. Hypothesis: the human biosocial anomaly 23-alpha, physical comfort. might stimulate dormant neural pathways, potentially offering a momentary reduction in neural overload. The hypothesis felt ridiculous. His logical mind rejected it, but his sensors were screaming at him. The Kylar were dying not from external wounds but from internal collapse. Days bled into a week. The galactic cognitive mire, as galactic media hesitantly dubbed it, spread like an invisible infection. Communications across known space were patchy, often cutting out mid-sentence. Starships, once beacons of orderly transit, were now drifting derelicts, their crews incapacitated. On Outpost Echo 3, Aris and Eva were isolated. The faint distress signals they initially received from Kylar space had intensified. Not just from Kylar now, from Xylos' own species, from the crystalline Zithorians, usually models of mental serenity, from the buoyant, gaseous flocks, all suffering, all exhibiting similar symptoms. Mental distress, sensory overload, then a quiet internal collapse. Eva, her face drawn with fatigue, brought Aris a mug of synthetic coffee. Another one, Aris, a Kylar scout ship, drifting, no response. Its transponder is barely alive. She projected the image. A small Kylar vessel, the *logical path *, silent and dark against the starfield. Aris stared at the screen. They never go dark, Eva. Not unless their core systems fail or the crew. She trailed off, a chill running down her spine. We have to help them. Eva hesitated. Standard procedure dictates non-interference with unresponsive vessels, Aris. Especially from a primary contact species like the Kylar. We don't know what's on board. Aris looked at her, her eyes firm. We are humans, Eva. We don't leave people to die if we can help it. Besides, if this mire is what I think it is, their own logic won't save them. Eva sighed, but there was a flicker of agreement in her eyes. All right, Aris, but we go in a two-person shuttle, minimum risk. And you stay behind me. The docking clamps of the shuttle hissed, securing them to the *logical path *. The airlock cycled with a soft sigh, revealing an inner hatch. Aris stepped through, Eva's heavy stun rifle raised behind her. The interior of the Kylar vessel was cold, the emergency lights casting long, eerie shadows. A faint, almost imperceptible hum filled the air, the source of the mire, perhaps. It felt like static electricity prickling Aris's skin. She could almost taste the metallic tang from earlier, stronger now, clinging to the air. Eva's calm crackled. Life signs, 3 of them, all in the command center. Weak but present. They moved through the sterile corridors. Every surface gleamed, a testament to Kylar precision, yet something felt fundamentally broken. They reached the command center. 3 Kylar crew members were slumped in their command chairs, their ocular stalks retracted, their multi-jointed limbs twitching in erratic, uncontrolled spasms. One, clearly the captain, a larger Kylar with intricate data etchings on his chitinous shell, was murmuring low, continuous gibberish. His breathing was shallow. Aris moved forward instinctively, her heart pounding. Eva gripped her arm. Aris, wait, we don't know what this is. Aris gently pulled away. I have a theory, Eva, and it's the only one that makes sense. She knelt beside the Kylar captain. His skin was rough, cool to the touch. His internal tremors seemed to be increasing. Aris remembered the observation Xylos had made about human touch. A risky, illogical move, but what choice did she have? She gently, slowly extended her hand. She placed it on the Kylar captain's shoulder. His body stiffened further for a moment, an almost imperceptible shiver. Then, just as slowly, the tremors in his limbs seemed to lessen. The low murmuring quieted. His ocular stalks, just a fraction of an inch, began to extend. The air around them seemed to lighten, the metallic tang receding ever so slightly. It was barely noticeable, a whisper of a change, but to Aris it was everything. She held her breath. Back on the Kylar homeworld, Xylos was in a state of carefully managed despair. The Kylar High Command was collapsing. Commander Kale, the formidable strategist, was now fully unresponsive, his massive form prone in a sterile medical bay. Kylar medical science, pinnacle of logical treatment, had no answers. Every attempt to stimulate, sedate, or filter the cognitive mire had failed. Reports from other species were equally grim. The galaxy was succumbing to a wave of mental paralysis. Then a faint, almost unbelievable report filtered through the garbled comms. A human intervention on a Kylar scout ship. The *logical path Xylos activated the visual feed. It was a low-resolution, choppy image from a distant human outpost. He saw it. Dr. Eris Thorne touching a Kylar. His analytical matrix fired up, cross-referencing all known data on human biosocial anomalies. Comforting touch. His optical sensors registered a spike in Kylar neural stability on the scout ship, a minimal but statistically significant deviation from the expected decline. It was illogical. It was unscientific. Yet Kale was dying, and Kale was his brother. Xylos had always prided himself on his detachment, his adherence to pure logic. But the raw, animalistic fear he felt for his brother's imminent demise gnawed at his carefully constructed rationality. He made a decision entirely devoid of logic, driven solely by a primal, desperate hope. He needed to find Dr. Thorne. He needed to understand this impossible comfort protocol. The asterisk logical path was slowly recovering. Eris and Eva had spent 2 days on board, taking turns sitting with the 3 Kylar, offering simple, steady contact. Not just hugs, but a hand on a shoulder, a sustained presence. The Kylar captain, who they learned was named Var, was now semi-conscious. His multifaceted eyes, though still clouded, held a flicker of awareness. He had even managed a soft, almost imperceptible click-whistle of acknowledgement, a Kylar sign of mild recognition. The other 2 crew members were also showing slight improvements. Eva, initially skeptical, was now a quiet observer, her stun rifle holstered, her posture less rigid. "It's like giving them something to hold on to," she murmured, watching Eris gently stroke Var's arm. "Something real when their minds are being attacked by nothing." Eris nodded, her own exhaustion palpable. "Exactly. Their minds are too busy trying to process the sensory overload. Touch grounds them. It gives them a single, clear input, a baseline. It's a fundamental human thing, Eva. We evolved needing touch for survival, for comfort, for connection." A sudden, urgent ping from Outpost Echo 3's long-range comms. Eva hurried back to their shuttle's console. "Eris, we've got a priority transmission. Direct from Kylar High Command. They're demanding to speak with you, specifically you." Eris felt a surge of apprehension. This could be trouble. The Kylar were proud, logical. They would not take kindly to a human fixing their problems with something they saw as primitive. Yet, there was an underlying desperation in the tone of the Kylar signal. Xylos appeared as a shimmering hologram in Outpost Echo 3's command center. His usual composed demeanor was replaced by a visible agitation. His ocular stalks swiveled rapidly, taking in every detail. Eris stood opposite him, Eva at her side. "Dr. Thorne?" Xylos's voice resonated crisp and precise, despite the static that still occasionally plagued galactic comms. "My name is Xylos. I am a lead researcher for the Kylar Imperium. I require the full schematics for your comfort protocol." Eris blinked. He spoke as if it were a piece of technology, a machine. "Mr. Xylos," she began, choosing her words carefully, "it's not a protocol in the way you understand it. It's not a technology, it's touch." Xylos's ocular stalks retracted slightly, a sign of what Eris recognized as Kylar confusion or disbelief. "Touch. Our data indicates that touch is an inefficient biosocial interaction. It transfers no data, provides no strategic advantage, and its physiological effects are minimal and temporary." Eris stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Minimal and temporary when there isn't a galactic mental plague, Mr. Xylos. But right now, it's the only thing that works. Your Kylar are being overwhelmed by an internal noise. Our touch, our physical presence, provides a single, clear signal. It helps their brains filter out the chaos." Xylos was silent for a long moment, processing. His logical mind was screaming impossible. His deep-seated fear for his brother was screaming try anything. "I require a demonstration," he stated, his tone stiff. "On a Kylar subject, one of significant neural compromise, specifically my brother, Commander Kale." Eris felt a surge of compassion. "Of course, if you can get him to us or we can get to him." Xylos gave a curt nod, his hologram flickering out. Eva let out a low whistle. "Well, that went better than expected. He didn't even try to arrest you for unauthorized intervention." Eris just shook her head. "He's desperate, Eva. He's trying to maintain his logic in the face of something completely illogical. That's a harder fight than any Kylar warrior has ever faced." The transport carrying Commander Kale arrived 2 days later, a stripped-down Kylar medical vessel with its own failing navigation systems, barely making it to Outpost Echo 3. Kale was a frightening sight. His body was racked with continuous spasms, his vocalizations a constant low moan. His ocular stalks were completely retracted, and his multifaceted eyes were dull, unfocused. Xylos stood by his brother's side, rigid with a mixture of scientific curiosity and profound personal anguish. Eris approached, her movements slow and deliberate. She knelt beside Kale, ignoring Xylos's intense scrutiny. She spoke softly, her voice low and comforting, even though she knew Kale likely couldn't comprehend her words. "Commander Kale," she murmured, "I know you're hurting. We're here to help." She extended a hand, palm open, and gently placed it on Kale's large, chitinous forearm. The effect was immediate, though subtle. Kale's spasms lessened just a fraction. The low moan softened to a breathy sigh. Xylos leaned forward, his multi-jointed ocular stalks extending fully, his optical sensors scanning Kale's vital signs, his neural activity. The readings, previously chaotic and spiking, began to smooth out, tiny ripples replacing crashing waves. It was not a cure, not a sudden reversal, but it was undeniable progress. Eris maintained the contact, her hand warm and steady on Kale's arm. She began to hum a low, wordless melody, a tune her grandmother used to sing. It was illogical, it was unscientific, but Kale's breathing deepened. After what felt like an eternity, Xylos straightened up. His voice, usually devoid of inflection, held a tremor Eris had never heard. It provides a stabilizing effect, a form of neural recalibration. How? Eris smiled gently. It's not just the touch, Xylos, it's the intent, it's empathy. It's telling another being without words that they are not alone, that you are there, that you care. Xylos was silent, his processors struggling to categorize empathy and care into a logical framework. He looked from his brother's slightly calmer form to Eris. A hint of something akin to awe, or perhaps profound confusion, flickered in his optical lenses. The news spread like wildfire through the struggling galactic networks. The humans, the emotional species, had a treatment. A bizarre, illogical treatment that involved touching. Kylar High Command, once dismissive, now broadcast urgent pleas for human assistance. Other species, desperate, followed suit. The galactic stage, once dominated by technological prowess and logical solutions, now awkwardly turned to humanity. Eris and Xylos became unlikely partners. Xylos, having witnessed Kale's slow but undeniable improvement under Eris's steady care, had become a reluctant, analytical advocate. He still questioned everything, dissecting the comfort protocol as if it were a complex algorithm, but he no longer dismissed it. He began to translate Eris's illogical concepts into Kylar-understandable terms. The feeling of being connected provides a bioharmonic resonance, counteracting the cognitive dissonance of the mire, he'd explained to his bewildered peers. The act of caring stabilizes the subject's internal emotional regulators, preventing catastrophic neural collapse. Eris found his translations amusing, but effective. She knew he was still fighting his own internal logic, but he was fighting on their side now. The sheer scale of the suffering became apparent as the galactic community opened up. Billions of beings from every known species were succumbing to the cognitive mire. Human resources were stretched thin. Comfort ships were hastily repurposed cargo haulers, filled with human volunteers from every walk of life. Farmers, teachers, engineers, artists. Ordinary people, trained by Eris's team in basic comfort techniques. How to approach a distressed alien, how to offer a steady hand, how to provide a calming presence. Captain Eva Rostova was a whirlwind of activity, coordinating the deployment of these ships, managing supply lines, dealing with diplomatic crises that arose when a proud species balked at the idea of being cuddled by a human. The flocks are complaining about human body temperature, she reported to Eris one cycle. Apparently it's too warm for their gaseous forms. We're trying to rig up cooling fields around the comfort stations. Another time. The Zethorians find direct physical contact invasive. They prefer a human to simply sit near them, radiate warmth, maybe a low hum. Eris nodded, her face tired but determined. It's about adapting, Eva, understanding their needs. It's not one size fits all. It's about empathy again. A major subplot emerged from the Kylar resistance. While Commander Kale slowly improved, many Kylar military leaders, like General Trax, viewed the human comfort protocol with contempt. They saw it as weakness, a humiliation. Trax openly argued against human aid, proposing a neural realignment weapon that would forcibly reset the afflicted minds. His plans were disastrous, leading to further neural damage in the few Kylar who underwent the experimental treatment. Eris knew she had to convince him, not just scientifically, but emotionally. She brought him to Kale's bedside. Kale, still weak, still suffering from periodic tremors, was being gently held by a human volunteer, a young woman named Illara who had been a kindergarten teacher on Earth. Illara was humming softly, her eyes closed in concentration. Kale's tremors subsided, and he let out a contented, if still weak, trilling sound. General Trax, seeing his once indomitable comrade reduced to this state, and seeing the tender, quiet interaction, felt a flicker of something unfamiliar. Eris spoke to him quietly. "General, your brother is recovering because he feels safe. He feels seen. Your weapons, your technology cannot give him that. Only connection can." Trax, rigid and unyielding, turned away, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Meanwhile, Xylos was obsessed with understanding the asterisk source of the Cognitive Mire. He worked tirelessly in the outpost Echo 3 labs, now repurposed with human and Kylar equipment. He theorized that if they could identify the origin, they could stop it. The comfort protocol was merely a treatment, not a cure. He analyzed energy signatures, psychic emanations, and historical data from every affected species. Eris, while focused on comforting, also contributed, describing the specific sensations the afflicted reported. A feeling of too much, of static, of loudness inside their heads. She noted that species with more complex neural structures seemed to be affected more severely, or perhaps they simply processed the overload more acutely. Xylos's data pointed to a specific region of the galaxy, a previously unremarked-upon void where no established stellar bodies existed. He began to cross-reference with ancient galactic myths and legends, a practice completely anathema to Kylar logic. He found recurring themes in multiple species folklore. The silence that screams, the great unraveling, the void which consumes. Eris's human intuition combined with his rigid logic. The crisis deepened. The number of affected beings grew exponentially. The human comfort providers were themselves beginning to show signs of mental fatigue. Illara, the kindergarten teacher, broke down one cycle, sobbing quietly into Captain Rostova's shoulder. "I can't take it anymore, Eva," she whispered. "So much pain, I feel like I'm absorbing it all." Rostova, ever pragmatic, had been implementing debriefing protocols and mandatory rest cycles, but the emotional toll was immense. She observed Eris. Eris, too, despite her unwavering resolve, looked drawn, her eyes shadowed. Rostova realized that Eris, the leader, the pioneer, needed comfort, too. She gently placed a hand on Eris's back, a simple, supportive gesture. Eris looked up, a small, grateful smile touching her lips. The cycle of comfort was not just one way. It sustained everyone. Xylos finally made a breakthrough. His multi-jointed claws hovered over a projected galactic map. "The source," he announced, his voice devoid of his usual detached precision, "is an ancient artifact. Located in the unmarked void as recorded in several primitive stellar charts. It is not radiating standard energy. It is generating noise, not audible noise, but an internal neural resonance. It is amplifying, it is accelerating." He pointed to a small, insignificant dot on the map. "It's growing stronger, Dr. Thorne. The Mire will eventually overwhelm even the comfort protocol." He revealed that the artifact, known in ancient Kylar lore as the Whispering Heart, was thought to be a relic from a precursor civilization, designed to promote universal mental harmony. Instead, corrupted or malfunctioning, it was doing the opposite. It was a sensory overload engine. The Kylar, under General Trax's continued, though now wavering, objections, formed a joint task force with human ships. The plan was dangerous. They had to get close enough to the Whispering Heart to disable it, but its chaotic neural emissions would quickly incapacitate even their most shielded vessels. Eris and Xylos formulated a daring strategy. The human comfort providers would form the vanguard. Their unique ability to filter the internal noise meant they could get closer than any other species. Their touch would provide a shield, allowing Kylar engineers, guided by Xylos, to approach the artifact. Commander Kale, now lucid enough to comprehend the situation, volunteered to lead the Kylar contingent, a clear sign of his transformation. "My species must bear witness," he stated, his voice still weak but resolute. "We must face the source of our suffering together." General Trax, watching Kale's unwavering resolve, said nothing, but a flicker of respect entered his normally cold gaze. The journey to the Whispering Heart was a nightmare of sensory assault. The further they traveled, the stronger the mire became. Even the humans, protected by their innate resilience and their constant, steady touch, felt the pressure. Aris and Eva were on the bridge of the lead human vessel, the Empathic Reach Asterisk, a converted colony ship now bristling with modified sensors. Xylos was beside them, his systems straining. He monitored the neural stability of the Kylar engineers in their shielded shuttles, their lives dependent on the human comfort providers embedded with them. The Kylar engineers, who had once recoiled from human touch, now clung to the hands of the humans beside them, their mental stability directly tied to the warmth and pressure of the human presence. Kale, in his own shuttle, his face grim, maintained contact with Alara, the kindergarten teacher. His multifaceted eyes, usually darting, were now fixed on her hand, a small, pale anchor in the storm of his mind. As they neared the Whispering Heart, the sheer intensity of the neural noise became almost unbearable. Lights flickered on the bridge of the Empathic Reach Asterisk. The comms screamed with static. Even Aris felt her own mind begin to fray at the edges. She focused on her breathing, on the solid deck beneath her feet, on the simple, steady presence of Eva beside her. "Xylos," she gritted out, "can you pinpoint a weakness? A focal point?" Xylos's ocular stalks were retracted, his entire being focused on the calculations. "Its core. The resonance is emanating from a crystal matrix. If we can disrupt its frequency, we can shatter the mire." But reaching the core meant passing through layers of distorted energy fields. The Kylar shuttles were struggling. Their shields were failing. Commander Kale's voice, strained, cut through the static. "We cannot maintain stability. The internal pressure is too great." General Trax's voice, surprisingly, joined the chorus. "We are at our limit. Retreat is advised." Aris looked at Xylos. "There has to be another way." Xylos, against all Kylar protocol, reached out, his multi-jointed claw brushing against Aris's arm. It was not an analytical touch. It was a plea. "My calculations are optimized, Dr. Thorne. There is no other pathway." Aris looked at the tactical display. The Kylar were about to break. Humans, they were the key. She looked at Eva. "Eva, can we boost the output of our human comfort fields?" Eva blinked, her mind racing. "Theoretically, by rerouting the ship's primary energy conduits, but it would be dangerous. It could overload the human crew, and it would leave us vulnerable." Aris nodded, her jaw set. "Do it. We give them all we've got. Send a general broadcast to all human comfort ships. Tell them to focus, to project their presence, to be a shield." Eva swallowed hard, then began issuing commands, her voice surprisingly steady. On every comfort ship, human volunteers, exhausted but resolute, took each other's hands. They closed their eyes. They thought of home. They thought of connection. They thought of the desperate aliens depending on them. A surge of raw, human will, a collective act of empathy, flowed outwards, amplified by the ship's repurposed systems. On the Kylar shuttles, the engineers, teetering on the edge of neural collapse, felt a sudden, powerful wave of stability wash over them. It was like a soft, invisible blanket, enveloping them, protecting them from the screaming static. Kale, eyes wide, felt the warmth of Alara's hand intensify, a clear, sharp signal cutting through the mire. "Push forward," he roared, his voice strong again. "The humans are our shield, for the Imperium, for our minds." General Trax, witnessing the impossible, felt a shiver of profound awe. He barked orders to his own ships, urging them forward, no longer questioning, only acting. The Kylar engineers, bolstered by the human comfort field, managed to reach the core of the Whispering Heart. Guided by Xylos's frantic instructions, they initiated the disruption sequence. A high-pitched, almost silent shriek resonated through the galaxy as the ancient artifact malfunctioned, its chaotic energies collapsing in on themselves. Then, silence, the true silence. The pressure vanished. The metallic tang in the air dissipated. The Kylar engineers, released from the mire, slumped in their seats, gasping. Kale, his eyes clear and focused, looked at Alara, then at his own multi-jointed hands. He brought one up tentatively, and for the first time, not in scientific observation, but in genuine gratitude, he gently squeezed Alara's hand. In the aftermath, the galaxy began to heal. The cognitive mire receded entirely, leaving behind a scarred but recovering galactic community. The Kylar, once the paragons of logic, were fundamentally changed. Their rigid society began to incorporate the comfort protocol into their daily lives, albeit in their own Kylar way. Simple hand clasps became common greetings. Short, shared moments of silent presence replaced formal salutes. Xylos, his detached scientific curiosity now tempered with genuine respect, continued to collaborate with Eris. He studied the neurobiological effects of empathy, no longer dismissing it as an inefficiency, but as a complex, powerful force. He began to learn about human art, human music, human stories. The irrational complexity of human emotion, he once mused to Eris, his multifaceted eyes fixed on a projected image of Earth's oceans. It is not a flaw. It is a strength beyond calculation. Commander Kale, now fully recovered, became an unlikely bridge between humanity and the Kylar. He personally oversaw the establishment of comfort exchange programs, where young Kylar were sent to human colonies to learn about their emotional depth, to understand the logic of touch. General Trax, still stoic, never fully embraced the comfort protocol himself, but he allowed its practice. He even, on one memorable occasion, after a long and draining council meeting, gave Eris a stiff, awkward nod, a silent acknowledgement of her profound impact. Captain Eva Rostova, always the pragmatist, helped build the infrastructure for this new galactic order. She ensured that the comfort providers received the care and support they needed, understanding that humanity's greatest strength also required its greatest vulnerability. She fostered a new form of interspecies diplomacy, one based on shared experience and mutual support. Humanity, once a minor, often overlooked species on the galactic stage, was now at the heart of the recovering universe. Their weakness had become the cure. Their illogical acts of kindness had saved billions. The simple human act of a hug, a hand held, a comforting presence, had bypassed all advanced technology, all logical frameworks, and had provided a universal truth. In the face of overwhelming chaos, connection was the only anchor. And as the stars twinkled bright and clear again, across a galaxy slowly learning to embrace touch, Eris Thorne looked out at the vastness, a quiet smile on her face. The universe was a little softer now, a little more human.